My goal for 2019 is to have more fun. I have to admit, I've spent way too many years not having fun and not being happy. I wonder, how many of you in this room could say that your lives are genuinely happy? Being happy should be the most natural thing in the world, and yet we look around and we see a world ravaged by fear, depression, and conflict. Internal conflict, interpersonal conflict, political and international conflict. How can it be so hard to just be happy? Who's being vulgar? I was shocked and startled by these accusatory words from my new 4th grade teacher, Miss Hall. You see, I've been transplanted from my relatively normal life in South Georgia to a British missionary boarding school in the African bush. My parents in their 40s had decided to sell the business, sell the house, pack up the kids, and move to Zambia to become missionaries. My siblings were sent to an American-run boarding school in Kenya. I alone was sent to a separate boarding school run by British missionaries. Now, don't be confused. They may have been missionaries eager to spread the good news, but they still retained their stern, cold British disposition. These teachers terrified me. The mean girls in my class terrified me. I felt like I was trying to survive a chapter of Lord of the Flies, or was it Oliver Twist? At any rate, I felt scared. I felt sad. I felt alone, really alone. We were completely cut off from any form of communication. As students, even our letters were censored. I had no emotional lifeline. There was no one to hear my cries. And so my cries grew silent, stuffed down, repressed, to be dealt with later. Some people think it's interesting or even exotic to have grown up in Africa, but the truth is my child was pretty much like anybody else's. I went to school, I learned math, geography, history, and unconsciously I was also learning a lot of things. Things that many of you may have learned. Things like, I'm not good enough. Things like, I must not be lovable. They did send me off to boarding school after all. And I had no idea consciously that I was learning these lessons of insecurity and abandonment. And so I grew up, as we all do, coping and adapting as well as can be expected. On the surface, I seemed relatively intelligent, conscientious, a hard worker. I graduated magna cum laude from nursing school and got the first job I applied for. I kind of thought I had my act together. But just beneath the surface, those landmines of self-doubt and codependence were just waiting to erupt. I may have been able to hold down a job and even impress my coworkers, but my personal life was a soup sandwich. Around 40, my coping mechanisms began to break down. I simply could no longer hold back that tidal wave of repressed emotion. I cried. I don't mean I missed it up after a couple glasses of wine. I mean I cried at the most inopportune times. Driving down the road, standing in the checkout line at the grocery store. It was about that time that I discovered hypnosis and NLP. And I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I was still clinging to the ridiculous notion that I had my act together. So when I took my first hypnosis and NLP course, it was, to help others. In spite of my fragile ego and my convoluted beliefs, it turns out Hypnosis and NLP work anyway. After that class, my life was never the same. Those processes really and truly healed my unconscious mind. I was no longer just white-knuckling it through life, trying to hold things together. For the first time, I felt peace and began to fan the flames of, could it be, happiness? My greatest desire is to bring this message of hope and happiness to the world. We all want to be happy. We all deserve to be happy. And I truly believe we all can be. After all, being happy should be the most natural thing in the world. Humans are an incredibly intelligent, constantly evolving species. We put a man on the moon. We created a global network with access to information in seconds, anywhere in the world. Our problems don't lie in the intelligence of our conscious mind. Our problems lie in the unresolved conflicts and fears in our unconscious mind. The great news is, with tools like hypnosis and NLP, we really can change it. And much more quickly and easily than you might imagine. And when we really do heal those internal conflicts, we'll free up our energy. We'll free up our time to use that incredible intelligence in new, creative, positive ways, instead of the old, fear-driven, destructive ways. And when we do heal it, then we as a species positively can be happy. It can happen for me. It can happen for you. It can happen for all of us.